I never imagined that my life could shatter in a single day. One morning my husband and his family told me to leave, with nothing but the clothes on my back and my 2 children clinging to me. Homeless, heartbroken, and humiliated, I thought I had lost everything. But a year later, fate intervened in a way none of them expected. I won a $200 million lottery jackpot. Suddenly, I held the power they had tried to steal from me, and I had a choice: revenge or rising above. Stay with me, because this is the story of betrayal, heartbreak, and the incredible rise of a woman who refused to be broken. Houston was humid that morning, the kind of heat that made the asphalt shimmer. I remember walking into the kitchen, coffee in hand, thinking it would be like any other day. But nothing could have prepared me for what was about to happen. Evan, my husband, stood in the doorway with his arms crossed, a tense line across his jaw. Behind him were his mother and sister, watching me as if I were a criminal. My kids clung to my legs, sensing the storm I hadn't yet heard. "Mom, what's happening?" my daughter whispered. I swallowed the lump in my throat, trying to stay calm. "Nothing," I said, forcing a smile. "Just a change in plans." Evan's mother stepped forward, her voice sharp. "You need to leave. Today." Froze. "Excuse me." "You heard me," she snapped. "Pack your things. All of you. You're out." My knees weakened. "But this is our home. Our kids." Evan didn't meet my eyes. "It's for the best," he said quietly, almost apologetically. "For the best. Throwing your wife and children out on the street was for the best." I gathered 2 small suitcases, ignoring the sting in my chest as I watched my children clutch their toys, their eyes wide with fear. Every argument, every tear, every memory we had built in that house seemed meaningless to them, and to him. That night we slept in my car. My children huddled close, shivering under thin blankets. I stared at the dark Houston skyline, feeling my world collapse piece by piece. I made a silent vow to myself as I brushed my son's hair back and whispered, "I will get us out of this. Somehow. I promise." It was the first promise I had made in my life without knowing if I could keep it, and I knew this was only the beginning of a long, hard journey. The first night in the car was colder than I expected, even with blankets draped over the kids. Houston's skyline twinkled in the distance, indifferent to our misery. My daughter's small hand gripped mine, trembling. My son's head rested against my shoulder, trying to sleep but unable to shut out the fear that clung to us. I sat in the driver's seat, staring through the windshield at the empty street, my heart hammering. Where do you go when everything you've built is gone? When the people who promised to protect you are the ones who abandoned you? I thought about calling my sister, but the last time I had reached out she had said, "I can't get involved. You know how my in-laws are." And she was right. Getting anyone else involved would only make things messier. Had no one. I had only myself, my kids, and the cold, unforgiving night. By morning, hunger and exhaustion forced me to make a decision. I drove us to a women's shelter I had found online. Linda, the director, welcomed us without judgment, handing us a small room with 2 twin beds. It was cramped, smelled faintly of bleach, and the window looked out onto a brick wall, but it was the first safe space we had in days. The children ran around, their laughter quiet but genuine, and I felt a strange mix of relief and shame. Relief that we were safe. Shame for letting things get this bad. But I couldn't dwell on it. My mind immediately shifted to survival. Food. Money. Something stable so my kids would never feel this fear again. Finding work was harder than I imagined. 8 years as a stay-at-home mom left me with gaps on my resume no employer wanted to overlook. I applied at cafes, retail stores, even cleaning services. Every rejection felt like a hammer to my chest. "Kids, you need me. I have to find something," I told them over breakfast at the shelter one morning. "Something that will help us get back on our feet." My son nodded solemnly. My daughter kissed my cheek, whispering, "You'll figure it out, Mom. I know you will." Her words gave me courage I didn't know I had left. Finally, a diner on the corner hired me. It wasn't glamorous, and it wasn't high-paying, but it was work. I started at 6 a.m., served coffee and breakfast plates, cleaned tables, and stayed on my feet for hours. By the end of my first week, I held my paycheck in trembling hands. It was small, barely enough for groceries, but for the first time in months I felt control again. I was providing. I was moving forward. And at night, when the children slept, I would sit by the window of our tiny room, staring at the stars, whispering into the dark. One day we won't just survive. One day we'll thrive. Little did I know that one day would come faster than I ever expected, in a way that would change everything. It had been almost a year since that night in the car, and life was a quiet struggle. Our tiny apartment in Houston was humble, but it was ours. The kids laughed again, played in the sunlit living room, and I found small joys in their resilience. I was tired, exhausted, but I was surviving. And surviving was enough for now. It started on a mundane morning. I stopped at a gas station to buy milk and bread. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and behind the counter, a bright sign caught my eye. $200 million jackpot. Final day to play. I glanced at it, shook my head, and almost walked away. Money like that wasn't meant for someone like me. But then the small voice in my head whispered, "Why not you?" I laughed nervously and thought, it's just $1. A small chance. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I bought a ticket. I forgot about it almost immediately. Dinner, homework, bedtime routines. Life pressed on. That evening, as I tucked the kids into bed, the numbers flashed on the TV screen. First, I didn't pay attention. Then the first number matched. Then the second. Then the third. I froze, staring at the screen. My hands shook. I checked my ticket again. One by one, every number matched. I was shaking so badly I could barely breathe. Had won $200 million. For the first time in a year, tears streamed down my face. Not of sadness, but disbelief, relief, and a strange, thrilling kind of power. I held the ticket as though it were a lifeline because in many ways it was. I sat there long into the night, staring at the ceiling, letting the magnitude sink in. My life had changed in an instant. Not because of the money alone, but because it meant freedom. Freedom from fear. Freedom from humiliation. Freedom from anyone who had ever tried to control me. And for the first time I realized. Had a choice. I could rebuild my life. I could protect my children. Could rise. And no one, not my husband, not his family, not anyone, could take that from me. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I filed paperwork, met with financial advisors, and kept my head low. Publicity wasn't something I wanted. My life had been on display long enough. The money, however, gave me something no one had ever given me: control. I moved my kids into a spacious apartment. It wasn't a mansion, but it was bright, clean, and safe. A place where my children could sleep without fear. For the first time in a year, they laughed freely, decorating the walls with their artwork and filling the rooms with the chaos of childhood. News of my win spread faster than I expected. The neighborhood buzzed. People I barely knew congratulated me. And then, I heard rumors that Evan and his family were aware. My phone buzzed one afternoon. A message from him. "Can we talk? The kids need to see me." I stared at the screen. My chest tightened. "The kids need to see you. You threw us out, Evan. You abandoned us." I didn't reply. I hired a few tutors for my kids and enrolled in online courses myself. Business management, investment strategies, and financial planning. Things I'd always wanted to learn but never had the time. Every skill I gained felt like a brick in the wall I was building around my new life. A wall they couldn't tear down. A life they couldn't touch. A week later, Evan showed up at my apartment. standing at the curb, dressed in a tailored suit. He looked shocked at our home. "You've changed," he said, his voice tight. I smiled softly, letting him feel the truth of it. "We've survived," I replied. He hesitated, then said quietly, "I think we should get back together. For the kids." I laughed, a short, sharp laugh. "For the kids? Or because I won $200 million? His face fell. He had expected gratitude, maybe a reunion. What he got was clarity. I didn't need him. I didn't need their apologies. I didn't need validation. I had everything I needed right here. After that first encounter, it became clear. Evan and his family hadn't really forgotten about me. They were just realizing what they had lost. A week later, Evan's mother called. Her voice was syrupy, almost sweet. "Darling, we made mistakes. Can we see the children? Perhaps reconcile?" I paused, letting the words hang in the air. The audacity. The hypocrisy. "You threw us out. You humiliated us. You abandoned your own grandchildren," I said calmly. "There is nothing to reconcile." She sputtered, flustered. "We didn't mean it." "I remember everything," I interrupted. "Every cruel word. Every look. Every moment. And I don't forgive it." Blick. She hung up. Then Evan came by again. He lingered at the driveway of our new home, hands shoved in pockets, his posture uneasy. I stepped outside, the kids nearby but quiet, sensing the tension. "You're different," he said softly, as if he were trying to flatter me into submission. "I am," I replied. "I'm the woman you chose to abandon." He swallowed hard. "I miss you. I miss the kids. We can work this out." I shook my head. "No. The only thing that could have worked was honesty. You gave me betrayal instead. The rest of your apologies are meaningless." He opened his mouth, then closed it, realizing his old charm no longer had power over me. "I'll go," he muttered, defeated. And he did. Standing on the porch that evening, watching them leave, I finally understood. Power isn't about revenge. Power is about freedom, about choosing who has access to your life. I didn't need them to hurt. I didn't need them to grovel. I only needed to protect myself and my children. And that night, as my kids played safely in our yard, I whispered to myself, "We are free. Truly free." After the confrontations with Evan and his family, life began to settle into a rhythm I hadn't known in years. But this was not the quiet, fragile life of survival. This was a life rebuilt, intentional and unstoppable. The first thing I did was invest in stability. A bigger home, yes, but more importantly, education for the kids and skills for myself. I enrolled in online business courses, financial planning workshops, and personal development programs. Every new skill I learned was a step toward independence I had never truly known before. During one of my volunteer visits to a local women's shelter, a young mother pulled me aside. "I don't know how to start over," she whispered. I saw myself in her eyes. The same fear, the same uncertainty, the same hopelessness I had felt a year ago. That day, an idea sparked. I started quietly funding emergency housing for women and children who had nowhere to go. No headlines, no cameras, no recognition, just real help for real people. Soon I expanded. I created programs for job training, therapy, and financial literacy. I wanted to give women the tools to save themselves, just as I had saved myself. It became my purpose. My life was no longer about revenge or even the lottery money. It was about strength, hope, and empowerment. The children thrived. My daughter blossomed in school, and my son discovered a love for drawing and storytelling. Every night, we sat together, laughing over dinner, their joy washing away the trauma of the past. I watched them grow, and I realized, I didn't just survive. I rose. And for the first time, I felt a profound sense of peace. I had money, yes, but more importantly, I had control, dignity, and love. Started subtly. A message from Evan's sister, Brianna. We're struggling. Maybe we can talk? For the kids. I didn't reply. Then came Evan. Not a call, not a text. He just showed up at the entrance of the women's center I had started, standing stiffly with a fake smile plastered on his face. He watched me interact with the staff, guide a mother through job applications, and comfort a child who had experienced the same fear my kids once had. I walked over, my head high, my voice calm but firm. You're here for what exactly? Yes. He hesitated. I thought maybe we could work things out. For the family. I shook my head. The family you abandoned. That family is long gone. I built something stronger. Something real. And it doesn't include you. His face fell. For a fleeting moment I saw regret, maybe even fear. You've changed, he said quietly. Yes. I had to, I replied. You taught me the cost of weakness. And now I'm unshakable. He realized then that his attempts at manipulation no longer worked. He walked away, defeated, while I returned to the women waiting inside. My kids were safe, my life was thriving, and nothing he or his family could do would change that. For a long time I had imagined humiliating them, proving them wrong, or exacting revenge. But standing there, watching lives transform because of the choices I made, I realized something powerful. Revenge is empty. Power is full. The women I helped, the security I built for my children, the skills I had gained, these were my victories. This was my empire. Evan and his family could be desperate, angry, or regretful. None of it mattered. I was untouchable. Not because of money, not because of success, but because I had refused to let them define me again. The morning sunlight streamed through our new home, warm on my face as my children laughed in the living room. I watched them and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Absolute peace. Evan and his family were gone from our lives for good. They had realized too late that the woman they tried to destroy had become unstoppable. I hadn't sought revenge. I had built a life so strong that their presence, their manipulation, their greed didn't matter. The Women's Center had grown beyond anything I imagined. Each success story reminded me why I had endured the cold, the hunger, and the heartbreak. Every woman who walked in broken but walked out confident and empowered carried a piece of my own journey. And my children thrived. They knew love, safety, and freedom. Every bedtime hug, every bedtime story, every laugh in the kitchen reminded me that we had survived, and we were flourishing. I realized finally that the true victory wasn't the lottery. It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the luxury or stability. It was freedom. Freedom from those who sought to control me. Freedom from fear, humiliation, and doubt. Freedom to create, to love, and to rise without looking back. And I whispered into the quiet Houston morning, we are free. Truly free. And nothing can ever take that from us. Life will try to break you. People will betray you. Circumstances will feel impossible. But your strength is measured not by what you lose, but by how you rise. Protect your peace. Value yourself. Build a life on your own terms. And remember, the people who try to define your worth will always be outmatched by the woman who refuses to be broken.
If this story gave you chills, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what's the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen play out?